93 CF Moreno Valley.
Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We are on KCAA 1050 AM all across Southern California. You can catch us if you miss us live on Roku, Amazon Fire, or on Android on the Building Solid Foundation channel. That's a free download app for you, or on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Also, if you miss our Thursday broadcast, we rebroadcast every Sunday at 2 p.m. Today in the studio, I have a special guest. She is a very accomplished young lady with a good following for her age. She is Ricky Perry. Ricky Perry was raised in the San Jacinto Valley, and if you're outside the area of Southern California, San Jacinto Valley is in the inland. It's known as the Inland Empire of Southern California, Riverside County. It's got Mount San Jacinto is to the east, which is a great hiking area, and it is, I would say, between Orange County and Palm Springs is where this valley is. Hemet and San Jacinto are the two cities out there. She was raised there, and what's important there is the Pacific Crest Trail, which is a trail that runs from Mexico to Canada as a hiking trail, runs right to the east of that area, and that's what Ricky discovered out there. She grew to see the wonders of the Pacific Crest Trail, which is a 2,650-mile trail that goes north-south across the western United States. Starting with no backpacking experience, she's basically step by step built up her confidence outdoors and hiked solo as a young lady all across the Pacific Crest Trail. We'll get more into that story. Ricky, thank you for being on the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me on, Steve.
That's an amazing accomplishment. So 2,650 miles. How many miles reasonably does a person can hike in one day?
For me, I built up slowly. I did not start the trail in shape. So I started off doing about 10 miles a day, and by the end, I was doing high 20s to 30-mile days.
So up to 30 miles a day. And this is not on a straight, flat, paved road. These are valleys, mountains, rocks, creeks, all kinds of stuff you have to get through. People that are raised in Southern California, we learn the history of the missions and the mission chain. They were roughly 20 to 25 miles apart because that was a day's walk. So you actually were walking that distance and more every single day, and truly by yourself, or did you have other partners that went with you?
There's a lot of people doing the same through hike. There's a few thousand people that attempt each year. So I was always around people. I went in and out of different groups hiking with friends that I met along the way, but I finished up Washington the last 200 miles completely solo.
And that's probably one of the tougher areas, I would think, higher altitudes up there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, aside from the Sierra, it is the higher altitude section of trail. It's the North Cascades, which is extremely rugged. And because of the fire situation this year, all of the side trails and roads were closed. So it was completely isolated from the rest of the world. It was awesome.
All right, so we're going to walk through this process because that's a major undertaking. And I know other avid hikers. In fact, listeners of this show may recall that a couple of months back, we had a guest on, Janice Bell. Janice was on actually talking about her journey from being a research scientist to becoming a real estate investor and private lender. But I know she is a very avid hiker, and she has hiked many portions of the Pacific Crest Trail. I don't know if she's done the whole thing, but that's the kind of thing that would be on that kind of person's bucket list. And Dan Reddick, who's been on our show, he's also actually on the Real Men of Real Estate broadcast. He also is an avid hiker. I don't know that he's done that yet. Then that's a major accomplishment. So let's talk about getting started, because you said you had no backpacking experience at all. You start from scratch. So first of all, what motivates you to decide you want to go walk this trail from the Mexican border to the Canadian border?
Well, I just learned what backpacking was 2 years ago. I didn't even really know how to camp before that. So I was going on my first backpacking trip with my friend, and she invited me to go and join her permit. And that was up to Mount Whitney, to the tallest mountain in the contiguous US. And on night one of that backpacking trip, I just loved it so much that I wanted to do it every single day and never stop. And that's how I started researching the PCT.
And that's a very challenging first trip for anybody. That's not a beginner's trip going to Mount Whitney. So that's a big challenge right there.
Yeah, I don't do things slow and steady. I just go for it.
All right. So you go on the first trip, and then obviously you have to figure out not just it's not hiking is not just physical. There's all the gear. There's all the knowledge. There's how not to get lost. There's how not to starve to death or to be dehydrated. So where do you pick up this information? What's your process?
I spent about a year doing what we call couch hiking, which means I was just researching the trail and finding out how to backpack. I learned everything off of YouTube and the internet. And then I just started doing practice hikes by myself, carrying my gear and not even necessarily sleeping outside, just carrying my gear around the neighborhood.
Okay, so you're practicing getting used to the weight and the balance and all those things. And I know there's a science to how to pack your pack to make sure that
Mhm.
it doesn't chafe you or you give you back problems and those kind of things. So a lot of trial and error on that.
Not much trial and error. I went on two backpacking trips that were less than 30 miles before to practice with my gear, and I just figured it out as I go. The PCT is very forgiving. The fact that in the beginning, every 3 days there's a town, so I could go into town and readjust my gear and my pack as I needed to.
Okay, and obviously fully self-contained. You're out there in the boonies, so there's no toilet facilities, there's no food facilities. You're on your own for everything, so you literally have to bring everything with you: your food, your cooking,
Correct.
sleeping, your change of clothes, hygiene, everything, right? And all that's got to somehow fit. Now, what's the weight of your pack that you're
My pack weight, it fluctuated depending on what the season was or what section, but it never got over 25 pounds, I believe.
That's pretty amazing. That's not much weight for everything you have to bring with you. So what's in that pack? What's 25 pounds mean in a backpack?
So the biggest section of weight is the food, of course. About 2 pounds of food a day, that adds up quickly. And then water is the heaviest. Other than that, I had my pack, a sleeping pad, just a 2-inch inflatable pad that was only as long as my torso, and a sleeping quilt and my tent. I slept in the clothes that I had on my back, and I had one change of socks.
Okay. So is this one where you said there's a town every few days? Is that where you try to find a hotel and shower or something like that? Do you bathe in a lake or what do you do?
Sometimes, yeah, I did a lot of trail laundry, so I'd wash my clothes up in a creek or a lake. I would shower maybe every other town, and didn't really get a motel room for a night's rest until I got out of California.
Okay. All right. And this is what time of year were you doing this?
So the PCT season goes from April to October. I just got back.
Which is the warmer season in most of the West, obviously. The
Correct.
West Coast, even in the mountainous areas, can get fairly warm in the summertime. So if you start in April, so you're in the hottest part of it. If you started Mexico and you went northbound, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so that's probably the hottest part of the trail. So you knock that out in April, which is probably the right time of year to do that. You don't want to be on that part of the trail in August.
Right. I was finishing up the desert. I was up around Mojave actually in the beginning of June, so it was pretty toasty.
Getting pretty toasty already.
Yeah.
Okay. So 90 days to get to Mojave, which is roughly center of California.
Right. It took me over 3 months to do the first half of trail, and then a little over 2 months to do the second half of trail. That's because I was building up my trail legs, what they call it.
Right. You can do longer and longer hikes, right, right.
Right.
And now I've been on little parts of the Pacific Trail because it crosses a lot of the major roads that go
Hmm.
around Southern California. If you want to get between the coast and out to the resort towns of the Coachella Valley, you have to go past the Pacific Trail. Um, and some of it is in fairly mountainous regions, and some of it is in low desert areas. It kind of hits every climate zone, I think, that's available out there. So you're lugging all this stuff, and you said you stop every few days to repack. But the food, now, if you're taking 2 pounds of food for a day, that means you've got to replenish during your trip.
Correct. So every 5 to 7 days when I would get into a town, that's when I would get to a grocery store and restock up on food.
And are you using so a grocery store? So you're actually using more fresh food as opposed to the dehydrated stuff.
Oh
I
no, it
guess.
was all dehydrated, processed stuff, a lot of
Oh,
mashed potatoes and top ramen.
okay, okay. Because I know they sell the special hiking um, kind of K ration kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But
uh, those were always like a special treat. They're about $10 a pack, and when you're not working and you're hiking for 6 months, pennies count anywhere you can save them.
all right, yeah, I know they have some what look like fairly fancy dinners, but I've always been suspect of a fancy dinner that comes in a pouch. But it's
They're
so
good enough when you're hungry.
so then the question comes up: is that able to maintain the nutrition? Because getting the fresh vegetables and those kind of things, is that a challenge?
Yeah, it is a challenge. Every time I'd get into town, I'd try to get those vegetables and vitamins whenever I could. I was taking a multivitamin and then some iron supplements just to make sure I was keeping my protein up.
Okay. And obviously the carbs aren't an issue. One, your age, because when I was your age, I could eat carbs all day long and it didn't affect me at all. And the second thing is you're burning, I don't know how many calories you're burning a day. You must be burning, what, 5,000 calories a day or something.
Yeah, by the end, I had a smartwatch and I was burning close to 5,000 calories a day. I lost 30 pounds before I even got out of the desert.
You lost 30 pounds. So,
Yeah, I did.
okay. I don't know that there's 30 pounds on you could lose, but that's,
Not anymore.
you know, so, I'm seeing you remotely, but you don't look like an extremely large person. So it seemed to me like that's significant, pretty significant percentage of your overall body weight.
Yeah.
That's pretty aggressive exercise. But, so we're going to have to take a break. We're coming to a break. When we get back, what I want to do is move to the next step is organizing your trip up the trail. And kind of, if you could walk me through, stage by stage, how that looked going through and what changed. So this is Building Solid Foundations Radio. We're talking to Ricky Perry. She has 23,000 followers on TikTok, and she completed the full 2,650-mile trail across the Western United States, Pacific Crest Trail. We're going to be right back with her story after this on Building Solid Foundations Radio.
FireUp Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. FireUp Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. FireUp Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
Are you a real estate investor looking for a new opportunity in one of the top tourist destinations in the world? Look no further. Welcome to Punta Cana. Perla Bahia is a private resort-style community in Punta Cana that consists of modern condos, custom villas, and various commercial amenities. So if you're interested in learning more or joining us on one of our monthly investment tours, don't hesitate to contact me today at 909-494-2280.
Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm your host, Steve Matley. Today we're talking to Ricky Perry. She is an amazing young lady who hiked the entire Pacific Crest Trail with really very little previous training at all. Started from scratch, did some research for a year, then put her pack on and got out there and did the entire trail. Before the break, we were talking about kind of the pack and the preparation for it. So now, Ricky, what I want to talk to you is your plan for moving up the trail and the different phases of it. So you started, you're in San Jacinto Valley. So if you started at the Mexican border, that means you had to go south about, I would say, roughly 2 hours from where you are in San Jacinto Valley to get to the start of the trail. Did you hike that, or did you drive down, get started there, and then just walk all the way up?
Right. I got dropped off. We call it the southern terminus. It's in Campo in San Diego County. So my
Right,
fiance,
okay.
he drove me down and dropped me off, sent me on my way.
And is that kind of a daunting thing to get dropped off and left in the middle of Campo by yourself in the day? Because Campo, for people that don't know, it is a small little town in the middle of nowhere in the desert of Southern California. There's really not much around at all for 100 miles any direction. So is that a little bit daunting to get dropped off and say, what did I get myself into?
It was incredibly nerve-wracking. In the beginning, I had the luxury of it seeming somewhat familiar, me being from here. All of my hiking experience is around the SoCal desert, but taking on such a huge task, knowing I'm starting at zero out of 2,650 miles, that it just made me sick to my stomach to think about what was ahead.
All right. And so you obviously had cell phones and those things, so in case of emergency you could contact someone.
Absolutely. I had my cell phone. There's great cell phone service through the whole desert. And then I also had a Garmin InReach, which is a satellite phone with an SOS spot device.
Okay, so just in case you can't get the connectivity through your carrier, the satellite's pretty much good everywhere.
Yeah, it is, as long as there's a view of the sky. So on cloudy days, you might be SOL, but it never seemed to be a problem.
So I know, as I mentioned, I know several very avid hikers, and the one rule they always say is, if you're not extremely experienced, you never go off on hikes by yourself. It's the craziest thing you can do. So in your case, you really are a novice at this point. I mean, you've been in this a year or less, and you are jumping on this. So what kind of safety precautions besides those things did you employ, knowing that the hikers get lost all the time?
Nowadays, everything is on our cell phone, so I used a guide called Far Out. It has the entire trace of the PCT there online, and that gives me information on water, tent sites, and different waypoints that might be useful. They make it incredibly difficult to get lost nowadays. Other
So
than
as long
that,
as
I know my desert. Oh, go ahead.
okay, so really the key is stay on the marked trail, stay on the known trail, and don't go wandering off on the side.
Absolutely. And the PCT is so well traveled, it's pretty impossible to lose the trail even without a phone. And if anything were to happen, I could sit down on trail for 10 minutes and somebody would walk by.
Okay. So and then I guess the other key there is make sure you're doing the trail in season as well. Because if you're doing it out of season, you might be a long time before anybody finds you. But if you're in season, as you mentioned, there's a good chance somebody's going to come by and help you if you twist an ankle or something like that and you need help.
Oh, absolutely. And in the beginning, there's a bailout point pretty much every day you can get to some kind of road that's going to have real traffic to get you into town.
Okay. Um, so you start at the Mexican border. So what's the first leg of that like? Because that's pretty flat, open desert out there. So what's that first leg look?
The desert was a lot more rugged than I was expecting. I mean, it's low in elevation, but it's consistently gaining and losing elevation. And from that desert floor, within the next 100 miles, you climb up to Mount San Jacinto summit.
Okay. And Mount San Jacinto is the second tallest mountain in Southern California, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
Um,
correct.
there's Mount San Jacinto, Mount San Gorgonio, and Mount San Antonio are the three largest peaks. And Mount San Jacinto is actually the mountain that the Palm Springs tram goes up, where it goes up to the snow from the desert. So you're get up to San Jacinto, which is more pine trees and snow during much of the year. Very different. Obviously, during the time you had been going through there, it would have been probably kind of basic spring weather, I'm thinking.
Yeah, it was spring. Lots of blooms everywhere. It was beautiful.
All right. And then from there, you drop down. There's a pretty sharp drop from San Jacinto down into the desert floor again.
Yeah, it's a 20-mile descent where you lose 10,000 feet of gain and you drop down into that banning area towards Whitewater.
Yes. Okay. So what they call the pass. And um, coming down that quick, I mean, obviously the change in elevation is going to be a difference in the amount of oxygen you're getting too. Yeah, that's a big drop. So is that kind of affecting you also?
It didn't affect me that much. I've summited Mount San Jacinto 8 times
Okay.
before I started the PCT, so I'm well acclimated, well above 10,000 feet. I've summited San Gorgonio several times as well, but I
Okay.
do know that it was affecting people that maybe don't live in places with elevation.
All right. All right. Now, I know people in Colorado may laugh at this, but in Southern California, that's some pretty serious elevation. Yeah. Okay. So then you cross over. Now you're on. You end up basically crossing to the north side of the 10 freeway now, and you're going up towards, I guess, Big Bear. Is that kind of the area you're going up towards after that?
Yeah, that's right. The trail, it goes up to Big Bear and then essentially you go up to the mountains and then back down and across the I-10 and then up into the next mountain. That's the whole SoCal section.
So Big Bear, you're back up kind of like Mount San Jacinto is more alpine type weather. And then you're dropping back down into a high desert after that. I'm thinking that's probably going out through Lucerne Valley, Apple Valley, that area. Is that where that is?
Yeah, that's correct. Apple Valley, Hesperia.
Okay. So that's going across where the 15 freeway comes across. And you're heading up, I guess, roughly along what would be the old 395, but up on the mountains, right?
Right. Yeah, we go up to Mount Baden-Powell before veering towards the 395 to get to Bishop.
Okay. So you're in Bishop, and Bishop is fairly far north. I would say if you were driving, Bishop is probably a good 3.5 to 4 hours from kind of the heart of Southern California. So that's a pretty good distance. It's pretty desolate out there too, all that whole area. There's small desert towns, not a lot around, and then when you're in the mountains itself, there's probably not much. There's even less. And the hiking trail does not follow the highway. The hiking trail, I think, is a little to the west of it. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah. So we
Yeah.
touch Mojave. The trail stays closer to Tehachapi before climbing towards Walker Pass into the Sierra Nevada.
Okay. So once you get through that area, that's kind of high desert. And now, and you said that's, you got up towards Mojave area. And you said that was probably about the first 3 months of your trip. Is that right?
I believe I got to Kennedy Meadows 6 weeks into my trip. So the second week of June is right around when I finished the desert section.
Okay. And at that point, the desert is not a cool place. By the second week of June, I'm going to say you're hitting triple digits.
Easily triple digits, and up there it's the barren desert. And sometimes there was a shadow off of a shrub or a Joshua tree, but it was the most exposed hiking I've ever done.
Yeah, there's nothing, not a lot over about 3 feet tall growing up there. So there's really no place to get shade. And you don't want to get in the shade anyways, because there's probably a rattlesnake under there.
I saw about 10 rattlesnakes in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah. Now, did you take a snake bite kit with you?
No, we don't carry anything. If something were to bite me, I'd have my SOS device and I'd be able to get to a hospital within 24 hours.
Okay. So you'd have to basically just tourniquet it off and wait for someone to come get you. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that is the thing. Southern California doesn't have a lot of nature that wants to kill you. It doesn't have alligators, and it doesn't have, a lot of water snakes and those things, but it does have rattlesnakes, and it has black widows, and it has brown recluse spiders, and those are kind of the most dangerous things we have. And there's some scorpions in the desert, but they're not deadly. They just hurt. But the rattlesnakes are the things that'll get you, and they like to hang out in the shade in the bushes. They also like to come out in the sun themselves on the trail at certain times of day too. You don't want to bother them. So, and they blend in. You have to be very alert. So I think dehydration would be an issue here. You mentioned weight in the pack. You would have to, I would assume, carry some extra water at this point in time across that open desert. Is there a lot of places to refill water along there, or is it a long distance in between?
So in the earlier parts of the desert, there would be water maybe every 10 to 20 miles. And I'd carry
Okay.
about 2 to 3 water bottles to get to each water source. Near the end of the desert, water is about 30 miles apart. So for me, that's a day and a half without any natural water sources.
Okay, so and that means extra weight in your pack because water's the heaviest thing you're going to carry.
Right. At 2.2 pounds each liter, and sometimes carrying about 5 liters, it just hurts. It's painful.
Yeah, and that means you also have to pace yourself because you're going to be thirsty, but you've got to conserve the water and balance that, conserving the water and not getting dehydrated. Because the worst thing, mistakes made when you start getting dehydrated is when you start making mistakes. When your mind starts playing tricks on you and you make bad decisions. That's one of the dangers in hiking being dehydrated. The other thing I would think would be a lot of sunscreen would be in order.
So I just wore clothing for sun protection. I'm actually horribly allergic to sunscreen.
Oh,
So
okay.
I had sun gloves, long sleeve shirt, pants, which just traps heat. And then I also had a sun umbrella that I clipped onto my pack.
So that means you're sweating a lot because you're, and the most people in that kind of weather would want to be wearing, tank top and shorts. But if you're allergic to the sunscreen, you don't want to get burned because being sunburned would be miserable on a trip like that.
Oh, awful. And I still got a bunch of color. I was so dark when I came out of the desert because there's no escaping the sun for days at a time.
Yeah, and even clothing is not really completely UV protected. It seeps through. It gets you. Yeah. Okay, so you're up there in the heat of the desert in the end towards the end of the beginning of the summer, and now when you get up to, I mean, you said around Mojave, is that kind of where you got to about that time?
Yeah, I was around or Tehachapi, Mojave, that area.
Up Hatchby, okay. And that's a little still a little higher elevation than the low desert. It's better than being down in the bottom desert, but it's still pretty warm up there. And Tehachapi is high enough that it does get cold and even a little snow sometimes, but it's still high desert, and it does get hot and it's very dry up there. All right. And you mentioned that took about the first 3 months, and then it took you 2 months to finish everything else. And I would say that the Tehachapi Mojave area is less than halfway, is it not?
Oh, yeah, it's way less than halfway. So
Considerably,
the halfway point is near the end of California. I mean,
right.
yeah,
So you
California
really
is
ramped it
76
up on
miles.
that last
I
two.
did. The terrain in Oregon helped me really ramp it up. Oregon is way flatter than anything in California or Washington, so I was able to do consistent high 20s, 30-mile days in Oregon to push through.
Okay. Okay. So now once we get past that area, I think from that point you're starting to head into the Sierras. And the Sierras, your weather's going to change a little bit, the topography is going to change, and the you're going to get trees, you're going to have rivers and streams and all kinds of water. Yeah. So that's a whole different thing. We're gonna get into that after the break and look through the Northern California stretch of this trail. The one thing before we go is what kind of lessons are you learning as you go through this?
That's a really good question. I think the PCT is really a testament to the strength of my body. I just learned to trust what I'm capable of, but also trust myself to make smart decision-making skills.
Okay, so you learn how strong you are both physically and mentally by challenging yourself.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to wake up and be in pain every single day, but still take on the challenge of hiking as far as I can, that takes some grit, and I learned that I had
And I'm sure there's many days you woke up and thought, maybe I should just go home today and say, try this again later.
it. I think I had about 2 days on trail where I thought, what have I gotten myself into? But I loved it every single day.
Fantastic. We're going to have to take another break. When we come back, we're going to get into the next leg of the journey, and we'll continue talking to Ricky Perry about her journey, traveling the full 2,650 miles of the Pacific Crest Trail from the Mexican border to the Canadian border with really minimal background and experience in backpacking. A true testament to when you put your mind to something, you can make it happen. This is Steve Matley on Building Solid Foundations. We'll be right back after.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
Are you a real estate investor looking for a new opportunity in one of the top tourist destinations in the world? Look no further. Welcome to Punta Cana. Perla Bahia is a private resort-style community in Punta Cana that consists of modern condos, custom villas, and various commercial amenities. So if you're interested in learning more or joining us on one of our monthly investment tours, don't hesitate to contact me today at 909-494-2280.
Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations Radio. This is your host, Steve Matley. We are talking to Ricky Perry today. Ricky Perry is a young lady who hiked the entire Pacific Crest Trail of the west coast of California from Mexico to Canada. And we've been walking through her journey that she took, both on the trail itself and the life-changing experiences she had. So in the previous segments, we talked about her preparation and then getting from the Mexican border up to around Central California. So where we left off, she was heading from the high deserts of California into the Sierra Nevadas. For those of you not familiar with the West Coast, you probably have heard of the Sierra Nevadas, a very well-known mountain range, very rugged. It's challenging enough that the Transcontinental Railroad had major headaches trying to get through there, and so did the freeway builders. So it's not the easiest place to get through. Pacific Crest Trail was established to allow a full unimpeded access all the way up the west side of the United States. And I don't know, I know there's a lot of people that hike it, but I don't know many people that just make up their mind one day, do a little research for a year, and then head out and go do it. That seems very daunting to me. So I tip my hat to Ricky for doing that. Okay, so Ricky, here we are in around Bishop Mojave area, and we're heading into the Sierras. So we are in June, so we're going to the Sierras in the summer, which is a good time to be in the Sierras. What kind of adjustments do you have to make going from desert hiking into the mountain?
So we're heading up into the Sierra, which gets the highest point of the PCT is at 13,500 feet, which is Forester Pass. So we're getting very high up where the temperatures can get well below freezing. So I'm swapping out my desert clothing, I'm getting winter clothing, extra layers, and I'm also now anticipating a lot of bear activity. So I'm switching out my food pack to the heavy bear canister.
Okay, so that adds weight to your pack, because what you don't want to do is have bears smell any food.
Correct. And the Sierra Nevada is like a highway for backpackers. The bears know that we're there and that they have food. So bear storage is very important in the Sierras. And on top of that, we're also now dealing with high altitude sickness symptoms, and really managing those as we progress through the various passes of the Sierra.
Okay, so it's like a whole different hike now. All the rules have changed. Where hydration and keeping from getting fried by the sun were the main issues. Now we don't want to get eaten by bears or be attacked by them to get our food. We don't want to freeze to death while we're sleeping overnight, and we don't want to have altitude sickness. Dehydration is probably still an issue up there. Again, California, even the Sierras, it snows up there, but it's a fairly dry climate anyways, even though you're higher elevation.
It's as soon as we hike up into the Sierra section, there's water everywhere. So you go from having no water to having too much water soaking your feet throughout the day. It's just an entirely different world. I got emotional, honestly, hiking up into the mountains, going from the intense heat and dehydration and the barren desert. And then one day you just pop up and there's a big granite pass and an alpine lake and waterfalls and flowers everywhere. It's really a spiritual, emotional experience.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing that inspired John Muir to take his pictures and to make Yosemite a national park. And when I was a kid, I used to see pictures of Sequoia, Yosemite, those kind of places. And I always look, it's great. When I actually went there for the first time as a person, it was still awe-inspiring, even though I'd seen all the pictures. Pictures do no justice to it. You have to see it in person. And I've also been in the so-called less impressive areas of the Sierras that are still equally impressive, where you look over the top of the knoll down and there's 3 or 4 or 5 crystal blue lakes down below you, surrounded by trees and rolling mountains. And it's phenomenal in that area. At the same time, it's a very dangerous area. Nature is beautiful, but at the same time, very, very dangerous. And bears, a lot of times they're trying to get food, not just for them, but that you have mama bears trying to feed their cubs. So you're up there. If it's, we're talking June area, July, you've got mama bears with cubs. And those are the most dangerous kind of bears you can
Oh, absolutely. I did not come across any bears in the Sierra, though people all around me did. They're just black bears, though. It's really not a big concern for people that are through hiking. Most of the times you see a bear butt running away from you. I did have one really scary experience with a bear that was more north near Mount Shasta. I had an aggressive bear that was trying to get into my tent all night, and that it could not be scared off. And that bear was in my camp until 3 o'clock in the morning. But those California bears, they're different. They're more aggressive than the bears in Oregon and Washington for sure.
They're probably more used to people and probably less afraid of people, because my
They're
guess.
more used to people, and my guess is there's less food for them there. I mean, up north they have so many berries to graze on, and here I think they're getting desperate.
Yeah, and yeah, a hungry bear is not a bear to mess with. That's no two ways about that. So and then the freezing issue, you go from the biggest issue getting dehydrated and burnt to freezing to death while you're trying to sleep at night. Now, you have a full tent, or is this like a bivy sack, or what kind of a tent arrangement do you have?
I slept in a full tent. I need my luxury tent that has enough space for me to sprawl all my items out on. And then I have a sleeping, it's a quilt similar to a mummy bag, and that attaches to the pad that I sleep on at night.
Okay, okay, and all that still fits in that pack and keeps it that way. And so that's a matter of picking the right equipment, because, and I do know that the right camping equipment that has the warmth, that has the size and space you need, but also is very, very lightweight, is not inexpensive. It's the most affordable.
No, it was a big investment, which is part of why it took me a year to accumulate all of my gear, is I was trying to make smart decisions and invest in gear that was going to last me for a long time.
Right. Yeah, and long, if you're going to do through hiking, long stuff, that there's not, no, you don't cheap out on the equipment. And you mentioned the shoes. The shoes is one thing you really don't want to cheap out on. You want to buy the best, most comfortable, what fit you. Now, you mentioned being wet. Did you have issues trying to avoid trench foot and those kind of issues?
No, that didn't seem to be a big problem for me. It was a pretty low snow year in the Sierra, so there was time for my feet to dry out each day. But I was
Okay.
hiking the entire trail in what we call trail runners. They're essentially just sneakers. I don't have a waterproof leather boot that's going to trap moisture in.
Okay. And being summer, you can get away with that, I guess. And obviously the socks are a big issue. I know for hikers, they live and swear by the whatever socks they wear, and they have to be obviously wicking socks that keep your feet as dry as possible. Because otherwise you get the blisters and all.
Oh yeah, I mean I used wool socks, merino wool socks, because those lasted me the entire trip. I didn't have problems with blisters. I'm just not blister prone, but a lot of hikers will use a sock liner, which is just an additional layer to prevent friction around the foot.
Yeah, or the double socks. Yeah, I've heard of those where they have one sock around the foot that basically that sock rubs against the other sock instead of your foot rubbing against it. Yeah, and um, I've had hiking blisters before. They're miserable, and once you get them, you can't. It makes hiking in the future pretty bad because it's hard to hike on sore feet. All right, so we're in the Sierras. Obviously, it's beautiful. You take a lot of pictures, I assume.
Oh, I take so many pictures and videos, and I was able to share all of them online with my friends and family.
Okay, and then we get up. Now, once we get to Sierras, we get up through Shasta. We get up into the extreme northern California. That kind of just flows into Oregon. That same topography and climate kind of just flows into Oregon. But Oregon has. Do you hit valleys when you get to Oregon? Do you get into the? Does it drop down into the valleys there?
Yes, we go through Central Oregon. It's still the crest of the mountains, but it's significantly lower elevation than anything before.
Okay, okay. And Oregon's a little different as well. It's obviously much less populated. There's do you eat natural food sources off the trail at that point?
No, I'm still eating my top ramen mashed potatoes, just whatever I can get my hands on that I can pack with me for a few days at a time.
Okay, okay. I didn't know if they had wild berries and that kind of stuff up there or not. You hear
Uh,
this, but
More further up north, like North Oregon and Washington, it was huckleberry season, and
oh,
I
okay,
I was slowing down so much because I kept stopping to graze on the berries.
okay. Yeah, and that's kind of nice. You can supplement your food that way with what's on the trail. And now
Exactly.
the trail, it runs basically through national parks and forests. Is that right?
Yeah, it goes through, oh, I want to say 27 national forests and then three national parks.
Okay. So there's not a lot of there's not a lot of private land on the other side. So if you did find wild growing food, it would probably be okay to grab that, I assume,
Yeah, a lot of the private land would be in the desert section. Those are cattle farms. But yeah, it's the berries are all free for grabs.
right? Okay, cool. All right, so we're up in Oregon area. Does the climate change much between the extreme northern California, Oregon, and Washington? Is it kind of consistent, or does that change? I think elevations get a little higher as you get north. Is that right?
Yeah, I was expecting it to cool down. This year was an unseasonably hot year for Oregon and Washington. So a lot of my time in Oregon, it was during a major heat wave. I think it was above 90 degrees for several hundred miles of hiking for me once I got in Northern California.
Which is unusual. Now I know that a couple of years ago, all that area there was a lot of fires up there. I know there was a high fire alert um, this past year, but I don't think it was as bad. I went up there in 2020, and I want to say fall, and everything up there was on fire. It was horrendous. But that's always a danger when you're hiking. If a fire breaks out, that can be a real problem.
Yeah, it is. And fire season seems to be getting worse every single year, so it's an increasing concern for thru hikers. I was very close to the McKinney fire when that erupted, and I had to bail out and get to Mount Shasta earlier than intended. And that's right around the time when the fire near Etna exploded. So I had to reroute around Etna in order to get into Oregon. It just seemed like the whole way up, there was constantly new fires sprouting up.
We're going to have to take another break. We'll be right back. We're talking to Ricky Perry, who hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. We are on Building Solid Foundations Radio at KCAA. We'll be right back after a short break.
Choose power today and help us create a cleaner planet. Over the past years, utility prices have rapidly increased. Power provides home energy solutions that would save money. Power is the world's first virtual solar company that aims to adopt sustainable energy worldwide. Our company delivers low-cost, clean, and reliable energy solutions. The solar investment allows you to become eligible for an income tax credit. The solar investment is a great way to provide long-term value. Power is the first solar company that reduces carbon footprint for a cleaner environment. Power is experienced and one of the fastest growing solar companies in the United States, which provide the best solutions according to your needs. Call today for your free solar consultation. Join us as one of our ambassadors and earn $1,000. Earn $1,000 when the installation is completed. Free sign up at www.power.com/marie.waite/ambassador. Feel good about what powers your life. Marie Waite, your solar consultant. 951-378-5316. Enjoy your life with solar.com.
This is Steve Matley. Join me every Thursday at 3 p.m. right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations radio talk show. I spent decades as a professional construction manager, business owner, real estate developer, and a college educator, and I enjoy learning new things from other people. We talk a lot about real estate, business, and finance, but we cover a diverse range of other topics as well. Some of the topics we've discussed in the past few months include real estate investing, leadership, higher education, ADUs, marketing using technology, multifamily rental properties, business strategy, entrepreneurship. You never know who may show up or what they may talk about, so join us right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations Radio.
Are you a real estate investor looking for a new opportunity in one of the top tourist destinations in the world? Look no further. Welcome to Punta Cana. Perla Bahia is a private resort-style community in Punta Cana that consists of modern condos, custom villas, and various commercial amenities. So if you're interested in learning more or joining us on one of our monthly investment tours, don't hesitate to contact me today at 909-494-2280.
Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We're talking with Ricky Perry, the Pacific Crest Trail, the entire 2,650 miles of it. And so we've kind of walked through the journey. So now we're getting towards the end. And Ricky, what I want to talk to you about is coming to the end. What's your feeling as you're getting closer and you realize you're actually going to finish this thing, and the end is in sight? You get to that last day or two of hiking. What's your feeling? What are you thinking?
Well, I can tell you when I had about 300 miles left, I was already picturing what it was going to feel like at the end. And as the last few miles came up, they were flying by way too quick for me. When I was about 100 miles away, I started crying because I didn't want this amazing experience to be over. But I was just so thankful for the time that I had out there. And as I'm getting close to the terminus, I had to do a reroute. Actually, the northern terminus of the PCT was on fire this year. So I did a reroute in order to get to a different Canadian monument. And That was a completely barren, unknown, not traveled section and not maintained trail, so I had to use topo maps in order to get there. It felt like the final boss of completing my through hike, learning how to read maps and hiking into an area that was completely unknown.
Well, you saved the most challenging part for last, even unexpectedly. Kind of put a cherry on top of the Sunday there. Um, so once you finish, what's at the end? What's at the end of this thing? I mean, does someone come pick you up, or is there people waiting for you? What's going on?
So the end of the trail is just a monument that says United States and Canada on it. I touched the end, I cried, I camped there at the monument, I watched the full moon and the sunrise, and then there's no roads for 22 miles, so I had to turn around and hike out to get to a road. And we call them trail angels, people that help hikers. She came to the trailhead and she picked me up, and 2 days later I was home. That was it.
Okay, so you have one more day of hike after your hike is done because you're out in the middle of nowhere, and then you able to get back home again. So what's the aftermath of that? You come back, you've accomplished this great thing. Obviously, you've shared it with people. You've got over 20,000 followers on TikTok with this. Um, how do you kind of assimilate what you've done and figure out what are the lessons learned? Where do you go from here? What do you do that's next? Because so a lot of times after you do a great accomplishment, there's a little letdown because you're going, okay, I did that. Now what do I do? So what does that process look like for you?
Right. So through hikers, we have a name for that letdown. Actually, we call it post-trail depression. It's 6 months of getting endorphins from hiking and being outdoors, and what goes up must come down. And for a lot of us, myself included, I do this amazing feat, this incredible journey. I met the most wonderful people, and I come home and it's over, and I have to go back to work. I have to save up more money and just go back to normal life. And I mean, normal life is not as beautiful and magical as through hiking is.
So what is next for you?
I got a job here in Hemet. I work at the Harvard Street Bakery. I'm baking pastries, which makes me happy feeding myself sugar. And
Okay.
I plan to do more backpacking. I have my eyes set on the Wind River Range high route for next year. And I get to plan a wedding.
Okay, great. Um, your wedding?
Yes, my wedding. My fiance
Congratulations.
proposed to me 6 months before I left for the trail.
Okay, congratulations. And um, do you still doing in between you maintaining your training with the hiking, doing small hikes here and there?
Absolutely. Before we get some winter weather, I'm going to do another ascent at Mount Skinnisino and do more desert hiking. Right now, the southbound through hikers are coming through the desert, so I want to hit the trail and do some trail magic for them as well.
Okay. Now, um, as far as I guess building a legacy off of this, do you plan on doing speaking or writing a book about this, or how do you plan on sharing this experience?
Right. I've built my platform mostly on TikTok. My plan is to continue to inspire and educate other young women or individuals like myself who didn't have access to the backcountry growing up. I really want to show people that, like me, you can go into a situation like this completely scared, but push yourself through it. I mean, I never gave in to my fears and I was scared almost every single day. So I just really want to continue to motivate people to challenge themselves in whatever ways that they want to.
Okay. And the top three takeaways you have from this whole experience, what would those
Ooh, that's a tough one to say. Um, work hard, rest harder, um, be open to different possibilities and experiences. And probably the biggest takeaway is that the world and its people are so much kinder than we give them credit for.
be? Okay. That's great takeaways. And I think if using your platform to spread that kind of a message, I think is a huge benefit to people. You find that the hikers doing what you're doing, are they in your age group? Are they an older age group? Who else is out there doing that?
I'm seeing people in all different kinds of age groups, but one that I'm particularly excited for are middle-aged women. we didn't see a lot of middle-aged women on trail, and I think that's because they have families and obligations that they can't step away from, and I get that. But I'm loving seeing the rise of women making time for themselves, taking a weekend away and backpacking and doing it solo and crushing it.
Okay. And that's where I mentioned Janice Bill, who'd been our podcast before. She is that person. And she actually brought her kids up doing those kind of hikes and got very active in Boy Scouts and those kind of things that kind of tied into that. So you can take care of your family, be there with them, and also enjoy those hobbies too. And I think there's ways to help equip and empower people to do those things, even though they have such a busy life. And you're right, when you're a parent with a family, between the work and the family and everything else you've got to handle, sometimes we neglect ourselves. We don't have the time to do what we need to do physically and keep ourselves going. So that's a very important message. Ricky Perry, I want to thank you for being on the broadcast today. I think it's very inspirational. A young lady who just decides to go and do that trail after one short hike, prepares themselves, takes it on themselves to learn the process, get the equipment, discipline themselves financially to acquire what they need, do it the right way, and then conquer that huge obstacle, that huge goal. It's extremely impressive and admirable. So I want to thank you for being on. You are an inspiration. I look forward to talking to you in the future too, to see what your future exploits are. And again, congratulations on your impending marriage. And we thank you for being on the show and inspiring our audience. This is Steve Matley on Building Solid Foundations. We've been talking to Ricky Perry. Check her out on TikTok, where she shares her story and her inspiration for others. We are on 1050 AM KCAA every Thursday and every Sunday. This is Building Solid Foundations. We'll see you next week. And until then, go do something good.
California's Mind Spring, progressive talk in Southern California. The legends you love and the best talk.